Hey, so I just thought I'd do a video, thing to video because something was occurring to me. So I recently had a discussion with a friend of mine, regarding the new Honda WN7 electric motorcycle. And, hi Sam. And it got me thinking, that conversation got me thinking about the motorcycle a little bit. A while back, someone posted a very insightful video on the differences between motorcycling in the West and motorcycling across Asia and the Indian subcontinent. I'll link that below. But the central argument, it's a lot more complex than this, of course, but the core thesis is that motorcycles in the West are hobbies to a certain extent. And even if they are an everyday form of transportation, they're very much connected to identity and self. So you are a motorcyclist, and which bike you have is considered an expression of who you are as a person, your other interests, what your communities are, etc. So it's very much a sense of self. Now, not to mention, we tend to use them more for road tripping across long distances, traveling. So we have these particular types of uses that we use motorcycles for. However, in the likes of Southeast Asia, China, East Asia, Indian subcontinent, etc., motorcycles are practical beasts of transport. People there ride them because they're more affordable options than cars. It gets them from A to B, but they're not much else beyond just being a device to do things. Furthermore, even the motorcycles in the different locations are different. Motorcycles in the West tend to be quite large. The term mid-sized being like 700, 800 cc's. They're designed to travel long distances, really comfort matters, etc., etc. And even when they're not that thing, they're highly specialized with different bikes designed to do different things, from dirt bikes to adventure bikes to touring bikes, sports bikes, etc., etc., etc. However, in Asia, bikes are expected to be utilitarian, smaller, definitely not the 700 to 800 cc range, and do multiple roles. You have one bike and it does all the things. So what does this mean for electric motorcycles? Well, my friend mentioned at the time that he felt that electric motorcycles had kind of peaked a few years ago, and that not in terms of technology, but just in terms of what they were. And he said that there would be what he phrased a weird reboot, where companies forgot what electric motorcycles could have been, were being, etc., etc., and then started over repeating the same devices that had been done previously. There was particularly in the discussion of the Honda WN7 and how the DC fast charging aside, the specs of the WN7 were largely comparable to a Zero of years and years and years ago. He mentioned that the market had become swamped with cheap, smaller Chinese options. I noted at the time in a discussion with him that I felt like the peak that he was mentioning corresponded with when EV cars exploded across the West, and manufacturers pivoted en masse to developing EV car models. But then the US had a backlash to EVs, and to a lesser extent the UK did too. And so the focus for a lot of car manufacturers went on Asian markets, particularly China, for both EV cars and, I would argue, probably electric motorcycles. Not in the least because also that's where the growing disposable income base is now. If you want to grow a new market in the transportation area, you're looking at Asia. Further, I would actually argue the use of motorcycles across Asia fits more with the limitations electric motorcycles currently have. Even if the tech is rapidly developing, but it's for smaller, basic functionality, and I'd actually suspect more price-dependent motorcycles, which is where electric motorcycles fit into. Not to mention, in a lot of the Asian markets, you're not needing the physical capacity to deal with high load DC fast charging. This is particularly where that price point thing comes in, because not including the things that the West would expect or demand of a motorcycle: fast charging, huge batteries, long range, all these things. Whereas in a lot of Asian markets, that's not necessarily the priority. Rather than you'll need a big, powerful DC fast charging unit, you can dealing with simpler home charging. You're not dealing with huge distances. You're going around cities in the local area. That's what you're using a motorcycle for. So in a way, that's what we're seeing now in electric motorcycle development. Again, even with the WN7, again, aside, with the DC fast charging aside. And so there is a reason that what we're seeing in motorcycle reviewers is so many in the West particularly couching electric motorcycles as commuter bikes. And I would say probably a little bit dismissively in a little bit of that. Maybe I'm being a tad uncharitable, but that's the phrasing that's getting used. I would say that's because actually they kind of are. That's what they're designed to be, for getting around cities nimbly and easily. There's a reason we in the West look at the motorcycles that are being produced and then discount them as motorcycle users, because they're not designed for us. Throwing in a reducing market in the West for all motorcycles, and that's ICE or electric, our wants aren't being catered to. We're not the target market. And we're running up against that history that always positioned us as being the market, always catering to us first. Now, the technology in electric motorcycles will improve and be able to provide comparable performance to the ICE motorcycles that the West expects. That'll happen. It's just a matter of the technology developing. After all, I mean, even today you can tour on an electric motorcycle. That's a myth I'm going to bust. You can do that, but you have to be currently, with the current tech, willing to work around the challenges that the current technology for electric motorcycles has. But you can do it if you're willing to do that. But right now, the West is not where the growth markets are. We're also we're not where the technology lends itself to, as I've been talking about previously. And also C, the way in which we ride, what we feel is required in a motorcycle for the way in which we ride, isn't as universal as we might imagine these things to be. Culture beats most things, and that includes motorcycles. So these kind of things are just things we have to think about, that maybe motorcycles have been developed not for us, and that's a little bit of a shock to some people. Anyway, just a thought. I wanted to throw that out there. It got me thinking, and so I thought I'd do a talk to camera thing. Okay, hope this was cool. Bye, y'all.